dispose of those as well. There's a lot to get into. We'll talk about it soon here on BBC Radio Kent. Meantime, keep your thoughts coming in. Give us a call, 0800 756 1111. It's 8 minutes past 7. So let's talk now about those new figures we've discovered here at the Wake Up Call that show reports of hate crime against members of the LGBT community in Kent have gone up by more than 400% in the last 5 years. In the last year alone, actually, there have been 544 reports, and that compares to just 96 5 years ago. So what is going on? Let's now turn to Yair Cohen, who, as I mentioned, is a lawyer specialising in abuse against the gay community. Thank you for joining us, Yair. And let's go back to that point we touched on with Liam just there about an increase in reporting. To what extent do you think that's contributed to a rise of the figures?
Very good morning. There's certainly a higher rate of reporting, but there's also a lower rate of police engagement and investigation. So with the increase of awareness, with the better education that school children are getting at school and more better media coverage and engagement with the LGBT community, we are obviously seeing an increase first in the amount, number and volume of abuse cases, particularly online abuse and harassment cases, which I deal with. But at the same time, we are seeing police that is unable to cope, that is lacking the training, is lacking the resources, which obviously is a bit of a problem because what's the point in reporting other than entering into some sort of statistics?
Yeah, indeed. And we were talking about social media just there as well. And presumably a lot of these characters on social media who post harmful things are anonymous. So is it even possible to prosecute and trace who's posted these things?
It is extremely difficult. First, we must say that anonymity goes both ways. So anonymity could be a benefit, but at the same time, it could be a hindrance, and it could be used or misused to bully and harass. And the problem, of course, that we are having here is that the vast majority of nearly all the major social media companies, they are based in the USA. In the USA, there's a greater element of an emphasis on free speech that take precedent pretty much over anything else. The amount of resources that are placed by social, say Twitter and Facebook is very, very limited. So there are less than 1,000 people moderating comments on Twitter, for example. So one could be reporting the harassment, the abuse they receive online and receive absolutely no response for a very long period of time. In the meantime, things could escalate. The good news, however, is that social media has given particularly members of the LGBT community the opportunity to gather together, to bond, to call their peers, to call their friends for help and support. So what we are seeing is that the conversations tend to be more intense, tend to be very highly emotional, and we are seeing huge amount of volume of backwards and forwards of abuse being thrown and at either whoever started it and whoever responded to it. So the engagement is good news. And I think the fact that people are able to have some support that they also find online by the peer, that's also very good news.
So what needs to change going forward then? Yeah. I mean, you work with people who tell you their stories and what's happened to them. What do you think we need to do to make sure we're not looking at, even starker statistics next year?
The police need to change the way they work with the internet. Is a matter of a non-brainer, I think. We need to have actual police present online. So instead of having to go to a police station and report a crime or just submit something, the police need to be able to be accessible to people online and then create better engagement with social media companies. So, for example, if one has been a victim of homophobic abuse online, they should be able fairly quickly report the matter to the police, and then the police should be able fairly quickly obtain disclosure orders and effectively smoke out those abusers and harassers. Because one of the problems, of course, is that people remain anonymous and they feel quite confident they will never get caught out.
Yeah, so I mean, it should be possible then, really, going forward, shouldn't it? Yeah, great to talk to you this morning. Thank you. Yair Cohen, a lawyer who specialises in hate crime. I wonder whether you agree with that. A police presence online, would that change things?
Well, this in from Kim, excuse me, who says, I would imagine that social media has increased the reporting of hate crimes. On top of that, we've reached a kind of hate crime frenzy where it's hard to define whether a look of disgust or a moment of disagreement exists because of someone's sexuality or because they genuinely did something disagreeable. Curious times ahead.